This is Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY, and it is our New Year's Eve 2022 edition. Next week, we celebrate our third anniversary of the show. Katie, where did the time go?
I don't know. This has been a lot of fun, let me tell you,
We
partner.
have talked to some heavy hitters over the last 3 years.
We have, and we have one of my favorite guests on the show this New Year's Eve, and it's like I told Dr. Whelan, he knows so much about so much. And it's a New Year's show, and so we want to talk about New Year's resolutions and positive things, Dr. Whelan, and so welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back with you guys.
So one of the things that happens, I think, as we get closer to the new year is we start thinking about how we as people can get better. And so recently I had a friend tell me, this is the truth, they were going to start going to church and they were going to stop chewing tobacco and they were going to work on an exercise program. And to me, Dr. Whelan, that
sounds too ambitious. One thing at a time.
But
Just that's how it sounds to me. Anyway.
Because think of what he has heard in his office. I mean, now in an administrative role with Munson, in a leadership role, big time. But for years and years, he was the family doc, and so everybody tells him everything. So, Dr. Whelan, can you give us some perspective on New Year's resolutions and keeping it real?
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point because I don't just hear patience echoes in your friend's statements, but I hear my own, your friend's statements. So all of us want to, take it seriously, and we feel like this is kind of the time where we're going to challenge ourselves. But you hit the nail on the head. If we decide we are going to cure all of our bad habits in one fell swoop, we are setting ourselves up for failure. The change is hard. Like, they're bad habits because they're habits. We will have a very difficult time changing them, and we should give ourselves a reasonable set of expectations, because as soon as we fail meeting the whole big set we might give ourselves, that gives us permission to fail at all of them. And so the challenge is picking one that either is the most important because it's immediately impacting your health or your life in some other way, or just picking, one as a priority and working hard on improving that. Any success there then just builds our confidence to take on the next challenge.
What about breaking it off into bite-sized chunks? No, I mean, I'm sorry to use the food analogy there, but if I wanted to say that I wanted to lose 50 pounds in 2023, and that sounds really hard to do, wouldn't it be more wise if I just said 4 pounds a month?
Yeah, so 50 pounds is 1 pound a week, right?
52 pounds.
Sure.
Yeah, 1 pound a week is 500 calories a day. And so all we have to do is come up with 500 less calories that we eat or more calories that we exercise. And between that combination, over the long run, we will lose on average a pound a week in a very healthy manner. And that feels very achievable.
Yeah.
Right now, with the holidays, we're each eating 500 calories in between meal snacks that we normally don't.
Exactly.
So there's a good starting point.
Okay. Very good. What's the number one thing that you hear as a resolution?
Weight loss is, most of us not only would benefit from a little weight loss, but it is something that's always front and center that we all are trying to work on. And because our natural body's response is to gain weight. So we're always fighting it no matter where we are at our starting point. Our body wants us to try and gain weight, and we have to fight that urge on a daily basis. So we feel successful if we're able to lose weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is true. For folks that say they're going to exercise, and oftentimes that goes along with they want to lose weight, what's realistic? If you're talking to someone who doesn't exercise at all, so we're starting at ground zero with this, what would you recommend for that person?
So I think I always try and, like you said, put it into bite-sized chunks. So healthy weight loss, easy to sustain, not easy, but more sustainable, is a half to 1 pound a week, or 2 to 4 pounds a month.
Okay.
That is both achievable for most of us simply by 1 or 2 healthier choices with our diet, and is not going to make us feel crummy. So we've all tried fad diets where you can lose 20 pounds in 2 months, but
Yep.
you feel miserable and it's not sustainable. Okay. So it automatically, sets up that vicious cycle of lose, gain. But if we say I'm just going to lose a pound or 2 a month, then that is actually very achievable and something we can sustain without feeling like we're making too humongous a sacrifice.
It's also more healthy too, isn't it, Doctor? Because one of my radio friends, I lost him when he was 46 years old, and he was a zigzagger.
Okay.
He'd be very heavy, and then he'd lose 50 pounds, and then he'd gain it all back and forth. And I always thought that played some role in him losing his life at such a young age, because that didn't look healthy.
Well, and there's actually a good physiologic reason for that, and it's part of the reason that losing weight can become so difficult over time. Yo-yo dieting, that's what we call it. If you lose too fast, when your body first starts losing weight, it can't just burn all fat. So if you starve yourself with a radical diet to start with, you will lose half muscle and half fat. And it takes a few weeks before your body starts burning mostly fat. But say you do that, and in the first month you lose 15 pounds, you've lost 7 pounds of muscle, which is the part of your lean body mass that burns calories. But you get frustrated. Either you don't sustain it, or you go on a cruise for spring break or something that breaks your good habits, and you gain that weight back. You don't gain it back as muscle. You gain all the weight back as fat.
Wow.
So you've lost 7 pounds of muscle, but you gain back then 0 muscle and 7 more pounds of fat. And as the proportion of our bodies that are not lean body mass become larger, the fat cells, for example, don't burn any calories. They just store calories. So it becomes harder and harder to burn enough calories to be successful losing weight. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
So that's really what you speak to those radical lose 50 pounds, gain it back. That is slowly replacing your lean body mass with fat cells, and then it just becomes progressively harder and harder and less healthy for you.
So is the healthiest way going back to the basics of counting calories?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So counting calories is difficult. One, not everything comes with calories marked on it. We don't all look up everything. It's a little bit inconvenient. I would say the 2 things that really are your path to success. One is healthy food choices. So you don't have to weigh or count your calories so much if you replace easy calories with healthy calories. So think of things that you drink, pop or sugary beverages, and replace those with no-calorie beverages. If you remove unhealthy snacks, so say you tend to have a cookie or 2 every afternoon, or a small bag of chips, and you simply replace that with healthier calories, carrots, celery, even cheese or nuts is healthier than those, you will replace several hundred calories and have healthier, replace or reduce several hundred calories without feeling like you're not eating when you would have. And so simple replacements like that, the sugary, simple calories with healthier calories. And then to counteract that muscle loss, a little bit of exercise. And it does not take much. 10 minutes of walking, 15 minutes of walking, a little tiny bit of weightlifting will strongly counteract that muscle loss that happens in a diet.
These are baby steps. We really appreciate it because we need to break it down for ourselves and for our listeners. When you talk about celery and carrots and fresh fruit, this is less convenient than grabbing a bag of chips. And I think part of it too is once you make the commitment, that you food prep a little bit. I'm not talking about, spending your entire Sunday afternoon making meals for the week, but I'm just saying having some things that are grab and go, like nuts and slices of cheese and, like you said, the vegetables at the ready, so that when you think of it, you're not stopping, what you're doing and going, oh, well, now I have to go back to a bag of chips because I've got to be to work in 20 minutes type thing.
Great. And so this is how I always think of it. And I'm looking out my windows right now, so it just reminds me. But you talked about spending your Sundays, but when it's, 6 degrees and snowing, none of us really want to go out too much. So we have a little extra time on our winter weekends to do that prep. And celery and carrots, they don't go bad. I mean, it take weeks and weeks to go bad. You can put a bunch of Ziploc bags in your crisper in no time and throw those in your lunchbox every day, or whatever you take to work, even your purse. They don't have to be refrigerated. They're easy. Things like fruit, I mean, they're self-contained and easy to take. And those, so now is actually the time of year where it's a little easier to devote some time to that food prep because, well, we want to stay a little more inside.
Mm-hmm. It's true. What about, you see people who team diet or couple diet, and, a lot of times that means one of the people is doing, quite a bit of the work. But one of the things that concerns me about that type of New Year's resolution is it's all or nothing. That, like, if the other folks, decide that, okay, I've had enough, then it's easier for you to quit. So I think it's a personal commitment. And if other people, want to work on that same particular area with you, then great. But I think it's important to have the mindset that this is my responsibility if it's important to me. That, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think an individual's success is definitely dependent on them being ready and committed to doing it. That's a great point, Katie. But there is a lot of evidence that shows that the primary meal prepper in the house has to be supportive in order for that to be more successful. So if only one person in a household is working hard on a diet, but the house is still full of all the unhealthy foods they're trying to avoid, or if it means they have to cook their own separate meals and everything, their success rate goes down.
Okay.
The concept of like work diet buddies and workout buddies, I always say you have to pick the right buddy, because most of us pick the buddy that says, I call them an hour before we're supposed to go to the gym, and I say, I'm not sure I'm going to go. And they're like, great, I don't want to go either. Well, then that's
I know that friend.
Defeats the purpose.
That's not going to be the buddy who helps you be successful. It might be your favorite buddy, but it is not the buddy that's going to help you be successful. You have to hold each other a little accountable, but do it in a non-judgmental way, so that if someone is struggling, they aren't giving you a hard time. They're just saying, come on, I'm going to go. I don't really feel like it either, but let's go. Those tend to be factors that help us.
Okay. We don't have to delve too far into this because I know you've got your own list, but what about folks? I know smokers in particular, my friends that smoke, they battle with this every year. This is the year that they're going to stop smoking. And some of them have gone from smoking to vaping, and again, in a non-judgmental way. But what would you say to those folks?
So if you ask doctors everywhere, the bad habit that we'd like anyone who has it to get rid of, it's definitely tobacco.
Okay.
So we just know how harmful it is. And we also recognize how difficult it is to quit. Mm-hmm. That said, I would say especially smokers, and then we'll expand this a little bit to others just trying to change bad habits. Again, cold turkey, one fell swoop kind of quitting is more difficult. It works for some people, but there are a lot of supports to help people quit smoking. Mm-hmm. There is nicotine replacement, temporarily using vaping instead of smoking. and then using gradually decreasing concentrations of nicotine can work. It's the same as going from 20 cigarettes to 12 to 8 to 4 and cutting yourself down. It's just like nicotine patches. They come in different strengths. You start at a stronger strength and then work your way down. So it's less difficult for you when you're going kind of through that withdrawal from the nicotine. So take advantage of those tools. One of the other big tools that isn't used enough is there are online support tools for people working on quitting smoking, but also breaking other habits.
Okay.
So it is amazing. It's just like Wordle. Wordle is a highly addicting phone device, right?
Yes.
But if you had the same highly addicting phone thing that encouraged you to keep changing your habit, which there are many of those, that 5 minutes on your phone can really reinforce your ability to be successful that day. And that's been shown over and over again. So the American Cancer Society, many other sites have tools to help with quitting, and they just come with little apps that kind of give you a little reminder of why you're doing it and to get you through your day. And it doesn't take any longer than playing your Wordle for the day, but it can really help you be successful. And those same tools help us with changing a lot of bad habits, reducing our drinking, increasing our exercise. So creating good habits and breaking bad habits are kind of the same process for our brain. It's really about doing it incrementally, and so it's not too traumatic on our bodies, and positive reinforcement. So reminding ourselves of all the benefits. So when you really want that cigarette, you just keep reminding yourself how much you also want to be able to keep up with your grandkids next time you go on a walk or something like that. So that positive feedback helps you get through the difficult times.
I know you have more on your agenda that we need to cover, but is it true that what people say about how long it takes to create a habit? I mean, is that true that it takes, 20 days or 30 days of doing the same thing in a row to create a healthy habit?
So there's a lot of studies on this, and I think all of them, I would say, come with a little bit of a grain of salt. And part of it is because each one kind of had a different approach and used a different population. They were trying to change a habit. So both, like creating a positive habit can take months and months. So it's easy to relapse. That said, the longer you stick with it, the easier it is to keep doing it. So the first couple weeks, often you're highly motivated. It's that next couple weeks that are really the challenge, especially if you're not seeing the success you want. Mm-hmm. But if you keep reminding yourself, well, now I have a 7-day streak I haven't smoked, or I've done my exercise 7 days in a row, that makes the next day a little easier to do it. Okay. So I guess there's no magic number. Like after 3 months, then you won't even think about it again. Anyone who's ever quit smoking or been successful on a diet knows it doesn't suddenly go away.
It's so true.
In 3 months, it's not like I don't even want one anymore. That's not really how it works. It just is easier not to give in the longer your streak of not giving in is. So I would say creating a habit is just about positive feedback, and the longer you're able to do it, the easier it is to continue. And if you do, break your habit, so you go on a vacation and you don't exercise, or you don't follow your diet for a week, knowing that you were successful before for 3 weeks makes it easier to tell yourself, I can do it again. Mm-hmm. And so I would kind of focus it on it like that. There is a lot of reading you can do online about creating good habits or breaking bad habits, and I think that also can help people kind of get ready for the change they're trying to make.
And wouldn't you tell folks, because this is a joke among doctor friends of mine, tell your doctor the truth. I mean, yeah.
I'm clearly biased, but doctors are, one, they're very human, and they don't always necessarily get credit of it. But like I said at the beginning, when you're talking about, all the things that the holidays ask us to try and change, and then our desire to try and change them all on January 1st, we're just like our patients. Like, we're all in the same boat. And so it's harder for them to support you and give you good advice if they don't really understand how big the challenge. Mm-hmm. So if you say that you, only smoke a half a pack a day when you smoke 2, or that you only drink 1 drink a day when you drink 3, they're not going to be as helpful to you as they could be. And they're not going to judge you, because they are human. They each have their own things they're struggling with. Mm-hmm. But they do want to help you, but it definitely helps if they know the whole story.
And when we make these changes, then we become healthier, and then we're easier patients, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just are. It's reinforcing for us that we, help someone be successful and that they are healthier. That definitely makes, primary care doctors at least quite happy to see people have those successes. It probably helps those doctors make their changes too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the stories that I could tell that people tell me. Real quick, a funny one is that a gal came in and she needed to have something with her blood sugar, a friend of mine, and her doctor was ill that day. And she got assigned to a different doctor who is, let's just say, less reserved with his opinions. And so something along the lines of, well, what we really need to be talking about is your weight. And she took that and lost 40 pounds in the following year, got her blood sugar under control, and went back to her regular physician. So she just popped in to see me one day, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing." She says, "You're never," and I knew both doctors. She says, "You're never going to believe it." She said, it was like an act of God. I mean, I went back to my nice doctor, but this other doctor told me what needed to happen, and I did it. And so I text that doctor, and I said, this really, I didn't use names, but I said, there was a life-changing event. She'll never come back to you. But you helped her, So yeah. Let's move on, just because we kind of look to you for a glimpse at the health of the community. How are we doing health-wise in Cadillac right now?
So I do have a couple things in our last few minutes that I want to reinforce. So I really appreciate a little bit of flexibility. Overall, I think Cadillac's doing well. We are certainly seeing some of that viral triple-demic that they talked about. RSV in Michigan is going down, but we did have quite a big surge of that. Influenza, Michigan was late across the country to be getting our influenza surge, and it is going up quite a bit, probably 3 times or 4 times more influenza cases than COVID cases, but COVID cases are also sneaking up a little bit in the hospitals. So those viruses still high on our list of worries, but we are seeing, not a dramatic increase, and much better than in the worst days when we spoke previously. Related to that, though, is just for awareness. I think people need to be aware that there are a lot of medication shortages. It is quite a struggle. So certainly reach out to your providers and reach out to the pharmacies about availability of medications should you come down with one of these viruses. That's a long conversation all in itself, but it is a challenge for the community and for your providers. So pay attention to the news and what's happening, but there is definitely some struggles on the medication side.
Speaking of the news, I was just watching a couple of days ago, and I noticed that there's a report of another COVID outbreak in China. So amongst the healthcare community, is there a concern that this is another thing that's going to find its way across the sea and end up in the United States? And what's the consensus amongst the healthcare community with that?
We certainly have to pay attention to it. Right now, the variants that are causing most of the cases in China are not new ones, so they wouldn't be new to the United States. However, if you have 100 million people sick, the chance of a new variant coming out of that surge is what everyone's watching very closely for. And that would then be a reason for concern, although there's no evidence right this minute that that has happened.
Okay. Dr. Whelan, when it comes to influenza, the things that you mentioned, the viruses, what should we be doing to protect ourselves and our families?
So, again, vaccinations work. So we should be vaccinated. And then we should be, and hopefully after the last couple of years, we've learned kind of our virus common sense and made them a habit. So we were so relieved that things like masking and washing our hands and avoiding crowds, we all couldn't wait to not have to do that. But every flu season is a reminder that those things still work. So washing your hands, minimizing your exposure to others in large crowds, don't go to work or go to school or anything if you're sick. So we hopefully have a heightened awareness of how we need to treat others when we are struggling with a contagious disease, and that's just how we would like them to treat us. So I think that will be a lifelong lesson we've taken from the pandemic is more attention to those details. But for all of us, it's both those avoidance measures and then taking good care of yourself. You are much less likely to come down with a severe case of influenza if you are doing things to stay healthy in general. So you're getting plenty of rest, you're drinking plenty of fluids, you're getting plenty of sleep, and eating healthy. Your immune system is stronger and more likely to fight off any severe type of viral illness. And so we should certainly be doing all of those things.
Okay. We talked about those kind of critical and core health things, but we had you on the show a while back and we were discussing mental health, specifically among children post-COVID and that kind of thing. When we talk about social media and screen time and our phones, what advice do you have for us adults out there in terms of moderation with that too? What does that look like?
So I think that's great, and that was the other topic I wanted to make sure we spent a couple minutes on, Kay, so thank you. We still have what we would call a mental health epidemic, especially among our kids. The stress of the last few years has really impacted them, and many are still struggling. We are learning more and more that things like social media can just create a negative feedback there. So when you're not feeling well, all of those types of feeds can feed into some negative thinking and not necessarily be so healthy. I personally believe that all of us, adults included, spend a little too much time attached to those screens, especially the little tiny one with numbers on it. And we can spend a little more time doing the two things I think that are kind of the antidote to those mental health challenges. One, and those are the building resilience things. I think that both of those are, there's a lot of information on that on the Munson website, so we don't have time to go into it in great detail, but they build resilience. The first is gratitude. So if we stop looking at the screens and spend a little time reminding ourselves of some positives and thanking the positive people in our lives, it really helps us feel better internally. So just being grateful for one or two things a day is a big way to counteract what can feel overwhelmingly negative, whether you are a teenager or whether you are an adult just watching the news. So remind yourselves of a couple of things to be grateful for.
I do want to make one suggestion, Doctor. I don't want to interrupt you, but sometimes when I'm dropping my kids, and neither of my kids are in high school right now, but there were times when if I wanted to have a morning that I needed peace and serenity, I would take the drive around the lake to go to the high school because I wanted to see that, to remind myself of the beautiful place I live.
Good.
And that's a great way to reset your mind in the morning. Anyway.
I agree. It's little things like that. So it is reminding ourselves that even though we had that big storm for the holidays, we had almost no power outages in our area, which everyone was expecting, but we didn't have them. We We don't live in Buffalo. Like, you can just start that every morning and say, I am grateful that I do not live in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel bad for those who do live in Buffalo, but we are pretty lucky that didn't happen to us. So we can be grateful for that. And all it takes is one or two little things that can make that difference for kind of building that resilience. And the other thing that really kind of counteracts all of that negative energy and helps build resilience is interacting with people. So a lot of studies show that just some interpersonal interactions can make a big difference in terms of how our day goes.
Person to person.
Okay.
Put your phone down and talk to the people at work at lunch.
Not on the screen.
Okay.
Spend 5 minutes talking to your kids or your parents about your day with nothing else on to distract you. And that little conversation starter often leads to the most positive interactions of your day and helps us then deal with all the stressors that we manage every day.
It's so true. I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with my youngest recently, Dr. Whelan, and I hung up. It was a support call, but I hung up feeling supported, yes. So it definitely goes both ways with, boy, I'm taking notes, Dr. Whelan.
Well, and I have to tell you, both of you, that we had a student. We have a student in our class who has an unbelievable amount of trauma in his background.
Okay.
And he came to Cammie Cook and to Derek Lahr and myself in the classroom, and he said, I want you guys to know that I have a purpose and I have a direction in my life because of you. I feel like I have a future. And we just turned around and basically said, well, kid, you're a rock star. Mm-hmm. And he does not believe it because he's lived his entire life conditioned to think he's nothing. Mm-hmm. And he is something. Mm-hmm. And we told him, dude, you are something. And that's something that everybody needs to hear.
Right.
Face to face.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So gratitude and interpersonal connections on a daily basis. Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are little steps that really aren't too difficult to do. They don't cost a single penny and can counteract a lot of negativity.
Dr. Jim Whelan, everybody. He's helping us be healthier physically, mentally, emotionally. Thank you so much for being so honest with us and for all of your wisdom and insight.
My pleasure, and thanks for inviting me, you guys, and anytime.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Cadillac Unscripted is sponsored by Independent Bank, and next week is our 3rd anniversary show here on 107.9 CDY.